Well, for more on this issue, we can speak to our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, who's in Brussels, as well as our correspondent, Shona Murray, who's in Dublin for us. Good evening to both of you. Darren, let me start with you. We've been speaking non-stop for the past few months about how different countries have different approaches to tackling this pandemic. So how much of a big deal is it that Scotland and Northern Ireland and Wales also want to go their way?
Well, I think in many ways it's almost inevitable that this has happened, given how complex these arrangements are in trying to unlock countries from very strict lockdowns. And to add to that, Tokes, ultimately, when you've got different political actors at play here. Now, we have to remember when it comes to the United Kingdom, it is made up of 4 different nation states who, up until relatively recently, were controlled by Parliament in Westminster. Devolution is only really 20 years old, in which Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland got their own legislative bodies. And what we've seen over those decades is increasingly a divergent political take. So when it comes to the coronavirus and this pandemic, it's maybe, again, as I say, not a surprise they decided to go in different ways. Now, we have to say, on the whole, there's not a great divergence between Scotland, Wales, England and Northern Ireland in terms of advice to the public. They are still pretty much all carrying on a pretty strict lockdown for the next 2 to 3 weeks and setting out a path in stages to how they are going to unlock. Now, there are some distinct differences about how far you can travel from your home, how many times you can meet up with people outside of your household. And that has raised questions, for example, about people who potentially live in England but work in Wales, about which rules they should follow. But on the whole, the advice is still, it's pretty strict, it's pretty similar, which is that for the vast majority of people, unless you need to go to work, you do still need to remain at home. The messaging has been slightly different, again, over concerns about what has been said by different governments. But the key thing in all of this is that we've got different political actors at play here, Tokes. Of course, we've got a Conservative Prime Minister in London, essentially ruling over the United Kingdom, but specifically has control over England. And then you've got the Labour opposition in Cardiff, a Scottish Nationalist Party in Edinburgh, and somewhat of a coalition government in Northern Ireland. And they want to speak differently, of course, from a Conservative Party. Politics is much about this as practicality.
Shona, let me take you back to a time long, long ago when we used to speak about Brexit very often. And you used to tell me how the border between Northern Ireland and Ireland is long and porous. So with Northern Ireland sticking to its own 5-point plan, as Darren was just mentioning there, how is this going to work?
Yeah, well, actually, Northern Ireland has adopted a much more cautious approach to England, I suppose, comparatively speaking. So it's a little bit more aligned with that of Northern Ireland. We heard today from the Northern Ireland executive that it'll have a 5-phased policy, but really will only tentatively start opening parts of society and the economy at the 28th of May, and even then refuse to give any calendar dates because they have to understand what happens to the virus and how the virus behaves, and of course the reproductive number, the number of new people an infected person might generate. So it is a bit more in line with the Republic of Ireland. But there are still concerns about that porous border that we've been speaking about so much for the past 4 years. Because, of course, in the Republic of Ireland, they're doing a lot more contact tracing. They know a lot more about where the virus is. And importantly, of course, when you contract COVID-19 in the Republic of Ireland, you have to quarantine for 14 days. In the north, it's just 7 days, as per the regulations or the advice from the UK, which means there are still concerns about people in Northern Ireland who may work in Northern Ireland or live in Northern Ireland coming across the border to the Republic of Ireland and infecting people there. And it is the case that the 2 border counties, County Cavan, County Monaghan, are the 2 counties in the whole of Ireland that have more cases than Dublin, and that they're, of course, border counties. So that has to be investigated as well. But I think there's probably some sort of relief in Dublin that Northern Ireland will continue with a much more cautious approach.
Darren, maybe you can shed some light on this. Normally tens of thousands of people would be crossing borders for work and other reasons between the home nations. Who's going to police and manage that traffic?
Well, in many ways, of course, these borders are still porous. No one's suggesting that there's going to be internal borders put up inside the United Kingdom. People are able to travel back and forth. Clearly, though, the confusion has arisen about precisely what advice they should be following, particularly if you are, let's say, in Scotland, but you have to travel to England for work or for whatever other reason. And that's where the difficulties come up. Now, essentially why there has been this divergence beyond, as I say, the politics that I was talking about before, is because also in Wales and Scotland, the R number, the magic rate of infection number, is higher than it is in England. And that is one of the reasons that both the Scottish First Minister and the Welsh First Minister have used for saying that they think they want to keep a slightly more stringent process in place in Scotland and Wales with more strict messaging than has been in place in England, because at the moment the rate of infection is higher in those two countries. But also, just to add to this, that makes it even more complicated, we have to remember in the United Kingdom, of course, England is the predominant nation there. The other nations, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, only make up around 10 million of the 66 odd million people in the UK. England, of course, by far the dominant nation when it comes to the makeup of the United Kingdom.
Dan McCaffrey, our political editor there, resuming things for us in Brussels, and Shona Murray.